Welcome to the HyperFast Agent Growth Show. Get real strategies, real results, and real estate them differently. Lead generation, team building, AI, and more from billion-dollar agents, best-selling authors, international speakers, and real estate coaches, Kerry Shull and Dan Lesniak. Let's dive in!
All right, welcome to the HyperFast Agent Growth Show. This is a new format we're doing, our panel show. We've got a really great panel today, and we'll be doing these episodes every couple of weeks, talking about real estate news, things that are affecting agents, things that are affecting buyers and sellers. So before we jump into today, we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. Quick rundown on our host. We've got former broker owner and superstar rockstar agent James Buckley. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
Podcaster and another real estate superstar, Nick Bush.
What's up, party people?
And mortgage loan officer extraordinaire, or as he likes to call himself, the mortgage goat. Is going to do over 100 million this year, so super high volume. Hopefully I got that number right, but welcome, Karl Svendsen.
Hey, yo. We need to ask Karl for some money, man. We borrow some.
Oh, they ask.
Congrats, man. That's a big number for people that don't know. So good for you, dude.
Well, Karl just got back from getting married, so he might not have any to give out to you, Nick. Sorry. So congrats on that, Karl. But today we've got a lot of great topics to talk about. Let me give you the rundown real quick. We've got 50-year mortgage, right? We've been hearing a lot about that. A lot of interesting agent reactions to that, and in response to just different ways to get home affordability down, right? That's one of the biggest challenges in this kind of frozen real estate market. Another option being floated out there is portable mortgages, right? So homeowners can potentially take their mortgage when they go, or sell it to the next buyer coming in. Some other ideas I know on how to reduce make homes more affordable again. Potential IPOs, changing the mortgage interest deduction cap, which is set at $750K. That's an idea that's out there. Then we've got this whole slew of lawsuits against Zillow. They are in like 4 major lawsuits now. The latest one is this class action lawsuit alleging mispractice and RESPA violations when it comes to the Flex program, the program where they refer leads out to agents and get a commission. And the plaintiffs in this lawsuit are saying that's not disclosed and it's a RESPA violation. The first agent, by the way, or agents, were named as defendants. So that's kind of interesting. And what else are we going to talk about, Karl? You mentioned Chat GPT and Zillow integrations and the potential fair housing issues there. So a lot to talk about. Let's start off with the 50-year mortgage, guys. Maybe we'll go to Karl since he's the lender. What's the thought on that 50-year mortgage?
Perfect product for the perfect person at the perfect time. From a real estate standpoint, like a real estate professional, I don't see why any real estate agent would have a negative outlook about the 50-year mortgage. The reason I say that is because that just gives you another tool in your tool belt to potentially make homeownership a reality for a potential buyer. Not the right fit for everybody, not the right fit for most people, I would guess, right? But that's my initial thought.
So, Karl,
All right,
what's the 50-year mortgage? So just compared to a 30-year mortgage right now and a 50-year mortgage, what are the actual savings that buyers will get from like a monthly mortgage payment standpoint and a down payment standpoint? Like, what's the real difference in the numbers?
It's relative to the loan amount. When we ran the numbers on, I think it was like around 500,000. It was a couple $100 a month of savings. And I mean, you're going to pay almost $1 million more in interest. The real negative is that you're going to have much slower amortization, right? Like you're going to build equity a lot slower. So where that can really hurt is if somebody needs to sell like in the first 2 years, right? They're going to have no equity position in the house. So your ability as a real estate professional to be able to actually market and sell a home is going to be challenging unless the buyer can bring money to closing, or they got the home for a really good price, right?
Yeah.
One of the interesting aspects that I heard about is you can choose to not pay that equity down, or you can choose to pay it down. So like just because your amortization is slower or you're paying less every month, you can still pay that extra 100 or 150 or 180 or whatever it is a month and amortize it down. So it gives you more flexibility that way.
Yeah, I
I,
think. Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I personally think that it's a lot of noise, right? Because during the Biden administration, they were talking about doing a 40-year mortgage, and then obviously Trump is a one-up guy, so he wound up with the 50-year mortgage, right? And you'll have, slower amortization and being able to pull that equity out to get the second home. But just like as James mentioned, everybody that wants to sell a home and buy another one, they kind of figure out the math problem for themselves, regardless of if they're in a 15-year, 30, 50-year mortgage, or even if they don't own a home, right? And so I think that like instead of all of us, and I did a video about this because it was relevant, I thought I should, right? But instead of all of us like talking about like the length of your mortgage, we should really be telling home buyers like that's cool. You have a 50-year mortgage for your one house. That's not actually like going to build you wealth or create any financial freedom for you in the future. Because if I look at it from like a build a real estate portfolio standpoint, from like an investor standpoint, right? Is that like, okay, my amortization is longer, the mortgage payment is lower, but is the cash flow still the same? So now I can build my portfolio and maybe make a little bit more money every month cash flow. So I guess if you're going to buy one house, like you're paying it off for 50 years or whatever that cutoff period is, if you make the additional mortgage payment, an additional mortgage payment every year. But we really should be telling people like, hey, you should be trying to build a real estate portfolio anyways,
Yeah, and I mean maybe this is a tool that helps them do that because it's reducing what they're spending every month, right? So they overall their real estate portfolio could have more cash flow. Now I think you can only use it on the proposal at least is it's only for primary home, right? So not necessarily for investments, but a lot of people buy a home as a primary, move out, and it becomes a rental down the road, right? Or you could argue that a lower payment on what you're living is going to allow you to have better overall cash flow and build your real estate portfolio quicker. I think the interesting thing is just the negative reactions from a lot of agents. Like they're pointing out how much more in interest you pay on a 50-year versus a 30-year over the life of the loan. And I don't know if I've ever seen a real estate agent do that when comparing a 15-year to a 30-year, right? Because
Exactly.
it's kind of the same thing. And for a lot of people, maybe this allows them to get in their home and that they want, right? So they're able to get access to or to start. I think for others, another interesting thing to do, and you can run these scenarios on ChatGPT, is analyze what happens if they invest the difference. So let's say they could qualify for a 30-year, but they opt for a 50, and they put that extra, monthly payment into the S&P 500 or something boring. Well, now they're at the end of 50 years, right? They're going to have more money left over, right, from the investment and the compound growth than they would if they took the higher payment on the 30 years. So it's interesting to see people knock it, but at the end of the day, I don't really think it's going to move the needle on affordability.
Yeah, me neither. I think the reason that we're not comparing it to the 15-year mortgage is because we're talking about affordability. And obviously, for the average, first-time home buyer, any home buyer, having that 15-year mortgage option first is like less affordable than 30-year mortgage. And then now it's like, okay, well, is this more affordable? And we're like, oh, well, not really, because you're paying too much interest, right? And so I think everyone's trying to figure out how they're going to sell the 30-year product versus the 50-year product and what the real pros and cons are. I think if this actually happens, the real stat that we would pay attention to see like what the impact of the difference is like what the average first time home buyer, the length of ownership for that first time home buyer. So I know like for a ton of years it was 7 years, right? Like first time home buyer lives in their house for 7 years. Now does that become 10 years or 12 years because they don't have enough equity
Mm.
to buy that second home? So I think like we'll need a ton of years to see like, oh, has this negatively impacted people from being able to move up because they don't have enough equity? I would doubt it, especially in our market in the DMV. But I think that's like the gauge.
I think it's
Yeah.
nice.
Oh, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead,
just
James.
gonna say, I think it's nice for people to have options, but human nature is, oh, I'll figure it out later. Let me do the lower rate now, and I'll get the nicest house. It could have the effect. Maybe this is what you're saying, Nick. It could have the effect of exacerbating the price, right? Because the more someone can finance something, the higher the price goes, whether it's higher education or housing or whatever. And so, it could exacerbate this problem that we already have.
And I think that's why implementation is super important. I think for it to be super successful, if it does come to market, there needs to be income restrictions on it. Because if you have to be below like the median income in the county that you're buying in, then it's going to only serve the group of people that need it the most. Whereas if it's available to everybody, then like James just said, it's going to work against the people that it would be meant to serve anyways.
Yeah. What about portable mortgages? Do you think, that's another plan that was floated recently? Do you think portable mortgages, and I'll pull it up here, right? So,
I think that's really hard to implement. It's sounds awesome on paper, but like you gotta qualify someone, and then just the mechanics of securitizing mortgages, I think, makes it really hard um, to recall that loan and then to repackage it. Karl, you're closer to that space. I'm curious what you think about that and the mechanics of it and feasibility.
Yeah, I think it would disrupt the secondary market. I think
Right.
that there would be it would create a lot of volatility from a secondary market standpoint, which would impact the interest rates for better or for worse on new originated mortgages, right?
yeah,
I've been
that was
told
one
that
of the
Canada
things.
does that.
That was
Though.
one of the things in this article here is that it basically would disrupt the engine powering the U.S. market because of the mortgage-backed securities and disrupting cash flow, right? So, like, there's the question of what effect would it have, but yeah, there's this bigger question of like, how in the heck would they do it, right?
Yeah, that's what I like. How do they even do this that it makes sense? Like some of this is, it's like, how do you even like how is this even realistic? I haven't thought about it a lot because I don't even see how it works. But how is this realistic? I think the other way to do this, um, and this doesn't help the seller and the new property, potentially it can, is if you just remove the restriction on assumable mortgages from only FHA and VA and you make it for conventional as well, then everyone kind of has the opportunity to have the rate that is attached to that property, and if it's lower, you can take advantage of it if you have the cash.
Now, I haven't read that article, Dan, but I would imagine this is proposed for like future loans, right? I mean, because all the existing mortgages have already been executed. The deeds of trust are already filed. I mean, you can't go back and there's no way that you could do it on the existing loans, right?
Well, yeah, and I agree. How would you do it, right? Because there's already like legal contracts between banks and investors and the homeowners, right? So how would you go? Like those investors would be taking a haircut basically. So would they be like reimbursed if this was forced down their throat somehow through law? I don't know how they would do that for existing, but the way you're seeing these headlines, like the Trump administration's portable mortgage push could let you keep your 3% rate, right? So they're at least the headlines are saying that this is a plan for existing, which then it just brings up that question more of like, how do you do that when these things are already, these things are already contracts that a lot of people have agreed to. So I don't know how you change it past the fact. And if you implement it now going forward, it doesn't really matter on new loans as much, right? Unless interest rates get up in the double digits.
Right.
That
Well,
that's
even if you could do it on existing loans for your move up folks, that it probably wouldn't even be a feasible solution anyways. Because if you're moving up to a house that costs $300,000 more, the average move up buyer is not going to have that 300,000 to put down to cover the difference or whatever the difference is in their loan amount, right?
Well, I think Canada is actually on a system more like this, where your mortgages are like 5-year terms, and then if you move up, you can take it with you, and then you get like a second loan. But every 5 years, you really have to go get a new loan anyway. Um, so there is a model up there, but that's been in place for a while. So the banks and investors and the money behind it all, it's used to that system. So adjusting to that now when rates are double in a lot of cases, I don't know how you do that with mortgage-backed securities and the banks and all of that stuff.
I think it's almost too much. It's more hassle than it's worth, right? We have a model, it works. I think overall, like rates are what they've been average historically, right? So they're not actually high. We just got spoiled for a ton of years, right? And I think that people that want to buy homes go buy homes, and even the people that are, I think that there was a certain point where like the $2,000 mortgage is now a $3,000 mortgage, right? And it's really hard to find anything at 2,000, even for like a first time home buyer who's been renting in a group home. But I think that the people that want to like figure that out, they always figure that out, regardless. And so like disrupting our entire system to kind of like duplicate or copy what's happening in Canada is probably not the most effective for us. And I don't know, I'm not an economist, but I think like from a get money standpoint, like we've been up for for a long, long time over Canada. So I don't know why we would copy their system.
Well, I think as agents, one of the things we can do is think outside the box, right? Like, what can you do now? Well, go study pace Morby and subject twos, and go study installment sales and contract for deeds. Like, there are ways you can help buyers assume mortgages that aren't assumable, right? You just have to do it through legal structures that are a little different, right? There's installment sales. I've helped people do that before. There's subject twos, and that also is going to help your seller, right? Because the seller can't take their mortgage through an installment sale to the next property. But if you present a structure where you're going to help someone get a 3% rate, the seller can sell that home for more money, right? So then they can take more equity the next place. So, I think as agents, maybe steady up on how to do installment sales and contract for deeds, because there's people doing them in all 50 states. And, everyone says, oh, that's illegal and you can't do that, but that's not true. Like, even if the mortgage has a due on sale clause, all right, it just says the mortgage could be called, right? But if you set up the right structure, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Karl probably doesn't like to hear that because it's cutting out the originators, but
That's how the lender, huh?
Completely unbiased.
yeah, but there's guys out there that are acquiring, building huge portfolios just based on that, and there's no reason as an agent, you can't present it to an option, present the upsides, the downsides, and let consumers make their choices.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Dan. I think that like we're probably even entering an age where because of affordability, right, high interest rates or the interest rates that still in the mid sixes, low sevens, and just like the people's income not matching what they want to buy on the market. I think that like the top agents are going to learn like the creative financing aspect of the process. And I think that as agents, it's kind of our responsibility to understand loans because I always say no one's ever walked up to me and was like, excuse me, no one's ever walked up to me and was like, hey, like, tell me about the home inspection contingency, right? It's always like the lender talk. And so I think that we have to have a pretty like solid foundation in like the financing part of the process. And so like adding to our arsenal, like subject twos and seller financing, like those creative strategies are only going to help our clients.
Yeah. Um, I mean, that's figuring out that is probably the single most thing like an agent can do to help with affordability, because like we can't control what the government does. I think another thing that these issues, by the way, also they all focus on like the buy side, right? Like how do you make the borrowing, how do you make access to capital cheaper, right? Which you could argue that that's just going to drive up prices. Um, and a lot less people are talking about, well, how do you drive the cost side of it down? And I think one of the shocking things that most people might not be aware of is just the cost of regulation in a new house. So I've got this study that is put out by the National Association of Home Builders, right? This study is a few years old, right? But so this is back when the median home price was around 400K, and you can see here regulations are adding 93,000 to a single family home cost. It's higher for multifamily too. So that equates to like roughly 25% of home cost. And
Wow.
I think they had a chart in there, maybe not, but um, and about half of that regulatory cost goes into the land development regulations, and the other half is in the construction re- um, regulation, and this amount has just gone up over time, right? So you can see here, NAR, National Association of Realtors, they put it at 23.8% of the cost, so pretty similar to what NAHB guys said. Um, let's see, there's another study here from attorney's office basically says the same thing. So there's tons of evidence out there is just saying like regulatory costs, right? That's 25% of your single family home, 40% in some cases for multifamily. So you buy a $500,000 condo and 200 grand is on regulations. Like, so is there a way we can streamline that? I'm not saying, we just let people build whatever. So, the houses have to be safe, but there's got to be a way to cut that down.
So the house has to be safe, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
So
that,
what, oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, everyone's pushing like the green policies, right? And so like new buildings in DC have to have a green roof and stuff like that, and all sorts of like pervious area for water runoff, which is important, but also being able to buy that house is important too. And I think we've gone really far on the safety, the regulation, making sure the roofs are green. But I think the bigger pressing issue right now is that people just can't afford homes, or at least there's the perception of that, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, from a policy standpoint, anything I think we could do to like at least study these regulations, right? And figure out like, okay, we're doing this thing twice, or this could be more efficient, or we could get it done. We can use AI to get these things done quicker, right? Because it's not just the cost of it, it's just the time, as the builder's building that product, they're sitting on capital, right? So that costs them money. So there's got to be ways to get rid of ones that are just not needed or maybe redundant, right? Make it just faster as well.
Yeah, I think there's, you always have to audit the red tape, right? Figure out like what's in place, why it's in place, and if it's actually necessary. And I think that's all that can happen there. We want safety and environmental friendly stuff, but if it's pushing the people that are gonna, if it's pushing out the buyer, right, then it's not useful for anybody.
I mean, arguably though, like how much is that really going to move the needle? Like even if you did, I'm sure there's some fat in there, but even if you trim some of that fat, I mean, if you shaved off, let's say 20,000 of that 90,000, is that what it was? 90,000?
Yeah, on like a 400K house, yeah.
Yeah. So you trim 20,000 off of that. That's only going to cut like from a finance buyer, cut the monthly payment down on average $120. Right. So, I mean, how much is it really going to move the needle?
Yeah. Well, clearly there's a lot of work to be done here. Let's move on, talk about Zillow. There are just so many headlines about what's going on with Zillow. They're in like four major lawsuits. Of course, everyone knows about the Compass one and the pre-marketing, right? Pre-MLS stuff that Zillow's trying to stop, right? Um, there's the Redfin one, right, where the government's coming after them for an agreement with Redfin to reduce competitiveness in rental listings. And then now this biggest one, which I think you could argue has the most impact on agents is the class action lawsuit. They're saying Zillow, um, through its Flex program, was rewarding agents who would send the clients to the Zillow lenders and the Zillow title company. They weren't disclosing this. In some cases, like the buyers are claiming they thought they were reaching out to the listing agent, and they didn't know that they were being pushed to a buyer's agent that was getting a commission, and then paying the referral fees to Zillow. So a lot of RESPA stuff in this. What are you guys' thoughts?
I think that this is the consumer's fault, and like it's like the consumer's fault, and um, you know, and the NAR and Realtor.com's fault for not protecting the agent, right? So like, there's not an agent in the country who's like pro Zillow, who's pro this estimate, who hasn't just told their clients that the agent you're calling on Zillow is not the listing agent; it's some agent paying for ads on Zillow. This is what we tell. This is what we tell the consumer, right? They don't listen, right? And so they're choosing to not be educated on that because they're not working with the professional, right? And then from the NAR and like Realtor.com website, where we could like regulate legally properly, all things real estate, they've like dropped the ball and like basically have allowed Zillow to like become a platform, grow, and then like pivot in a ton of different ways, because I think Zillow's also legally a brokerage now, which is why they're even in trouble for this. And so I think it's like it's an education issue, but it's not because of the real estate agents, right? And we know that like real estate agents at brokerages have to sign ABA disclosures with every client. Um, every client based on like lender and title, right? And most of us have a go-to lender, which should not be illegal, or we have two or three that we refer people to. So I think this is just like the consumer like not being educated and thinking like Zillow somehow is the wave.
Nick, I think that's a big part of it. But the other part that people aren't really talking about is that Zillow, yes, they've got this attractive website, but Zillow and Redfin and all the rest of them paid tons and tons and tons, so many millions of dollars to show up high up in the Google search results. So it's not like they just attracted all these buyers and they can benefit from selling these leads. They wedged their way in by paying yet another like tech company so that they could scoop up the attention of these people so that they could turn around and charge other people more money.
Yeah, I mean, Compass is a big tech company essentially, right? Running as a real estate company, right? They've had cash like EXP's where we are is a big, kind of like tech play. Like they have cash, so does Real. And so like and then we pay a bunch of dues as like real estate agents, right? And Zillow's been able and so we're not like prioritizing like as an industry, right? Kind of like the people that are running are not prioritizing the tech play, and they've been watching Zillow run for 10 years and or longer and just like beat them out, right? And us as agents see the blow they take when I think it was like Anywhere is like losing and losing Zillow home, like all these they're losing money, right? But the consumer doesn't pick that up because all home buyers want to do is look at homes, and all home sellers want to do is find out what their home is worth, and that's so easy to do on Zillow, right? And the consumer is not going to like become enlightened because a bunch of real estate agents on social media are like, "Hey, don't trust your Zestimate," right? Because like it's better to just to look at the number and think that it's worth that, right? And seemingly, like NAR isn't doing anything to combat it either. So you have just like this middle. Um, People
I
are
would
going to use
argue
the
that
platform again.
I would argue that it's so easy to go on Zillow, not because Zillow's website is easy, but because Zillow is at the top of the Google search because they pay to be there.
Yeah.
And that costs consumers money, that Google top ranking search result.
But also,
I
how
think
can you?
with this lawsuit, it's like Zillow has to monetize, right? For years they lost money. Then they started out selling leads to agents, and that wasn't enough to monetize and make a profit. And then they started saying, well, we'll just, instead of charging you per lead, we'll take this 35, now 45% referral fee. And that wasn't enough money. Right. So then they're like, okay, we'll give you more good leads if a certain amount of your leads end up using Zillow Mortgage and Zillow Title and whatever. And the consumers are complaining that they're paying higher rates because of that. Right. So
I
that's where we're getting into this RESPA violation is the getting the better leads is potentially a kickback for sending them to Zillow Mortgage, and that's not disclosed properly.
yeah.
And now they've named three different real estate brokerages now. This is in the lawsuit. So they've got three different ones have been named: Works Industries LLC in Oregon, GK Properties in Nevada, and the Frano team in Florida. So that's two brokerages and a team now that are being named. These are all Zillow Flex agents. And I think that is kind of interesting, right? If especially if like your business is on Flex, and they got different complaints here, like alleged in this amended lawsuit, right? Like using in-person office visits to instruct affiliates on loan quotas to avoid leaving a paper trail. Like you got here misrepresenting or admitting closing cost information leading to other costs, promoting Zillow affiliate agents as a top agent based on participation in the program, right? Despite maybe a lack of actual knowledge about the neighborhoods and real estate and different things. This is an interesting one. Requiring affiliated agencies follow-up boss, which allows them to monitor communications and identify which agents are recommending other mortgage lenders. So um, I think one of the things, you see a lot of like huge teams and even smaller teams now that are really reliant on Zillow and Zillow Flex program, and this could be a game changer, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think disclosure, I think every kind of brokerage should handle disclosure, right? Like when we submit, right, compliance is like, hey, disclosure. So I think that's like the easy thing to avoid the lawsuit. But I think that there was something in there, like using like, and then I think that people don't. I think the real estate industry is like, we don't want to monopolize, which is good, right? Like we can't become a conglomerate, but like it is America, and that's kind of how everything works, anyways. So um, is Zillow going to have any real impact? Like, is there going to be any real impact because agents will still buy leads?
Maybe, but if it's, I mean, this could make it illegal to use. This could like outlaw the Flex program or change it or make just a bunch of disclosure. Maybe that's an extreme, man. Maybe at the end of the day, there's just some fines Zillow pays, and they pay it on behalf of the agents if the fines ends up there. Maybe not, or and maybe they allow them to continue. They just have to disclose a lot more throughout the process.
Maybe this podcast right here, shuts Zillow down forever. They're exposed now.
I think if
Yeah.
Zillow disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't change anything to the real estate industry, except those people who rely on Zillow
Agreed.
would have to just go out and earn more money and talk to people in a different way. I think I see Zillow and similar services as like the mob. They're rent seekers, and they've wedged themselves into this position not from a meritocracy, but just paying more money to get to the top of the Google search and doing these other things. And I don't think they provide much of a service. It's just a website, and maybe at first they had the best website, but now there are a million copycat websites that every agent has, from luxury presence to custom builds. And if it disappeared tomorrow, I think the consumer would be much better off.
Yeah, it's hard to take someone down when they have such a strong position already. They've been an existing player for as long as they have. So, and they've got the cash to continue to be, top of mind in the consumer's eyes.
Yeah, so they're not profitable, am I right?
I believe they are not. I don't know. I can look that up here, but
So if they're not profitable, they've only got a certain amount of runway, right? And a certain amount of cash that they're raising. If they are profitable, then I guess it continues.
Yeah, let's see. Last one. Last. Oh, they did make a profit. Oh, that was 24. So I don't know about the. Just look up the headlines here.
And then you'd have to like pull out the iBuyer stuff. I don't know if they're doing that anymore.
Yeah, they're making 42 cents a share for 44 cents a share
Okay.
last last quarter. So they are making money.
Okay. That's something.
And they have a lot of money. They have, they've so they can stay top of mind of the consumer. I think the big takeaway if you're an agent is like, what can I do to get my arms around my database, right? How do I generate and own my own leads so I don't have to rely on renting my business out from these platforms and portals? Because they could change their policy on a dime. The government could change the policy that what they're allowed to do. So if that is a certain percentage of your business, right, then that pillar is like constantly at risk. Like you really don't have control over it. Well, I think this is a good stopping point. We didn't get to everything we wanted to cover on the first one, but make sure you tune back in the next time we're on. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, leave us a review, give us some comments on YouTube. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
You've been listening to HyperFast Agent Growth Show with Karl Svendsen and Dan Lesniak. Real strategies, real results, real estate done differently. If you love this episode, tap subscribe and share with another agent who's ready to grow.